Linda Perez, and I am the minister here serving this congregation, and I welcome you all today to the solemn occasion of Lynn Howell's Memorial. Today, as we gather for this somber occasion to honor and remember Lynn, husband, father, son, brother, uncle, and friend to many. We remember his life and the memories that we cherish.
The song that was just playing, the reason we put it into the service today was when my brother and my mother and Missy were in Hawaii the last time. That was playing in the helicopter. So it was requested that we play it today, and you can imagine Hawaii down below you with that in your headphones. It must have been gorgeous. And I have to admit, it's the first time I've ever been teary-eyed at listening to Over the Rainbow. In any case, my name's Randy Howell. I'm Lynn's brother, as most of you know. And my first recollection of my brother took place in the 1950s on a family trip when we were traveling from our home in Freeport, Texas, to visit relatives in Wisconsin. Lynn was almost 12 and I was 6. Looking back, it's as if Lynn was always waiting for his next train ride. Lynn loved everything about trains. In fact, our father would have to take Lynn to the train station every single day at 5 o'clock so he could watch the trains arrive. He put up quite a tantrum if he missed his trains arriving every day. In any case, on our trip to Wisconsin, my parents had always reserved a sleeping car with a private restroom. And as soon as we got on the train that day and it started to leave the station, Lynn went directly to the restroom. And he called to me and he said, "Hey, come look at this, Randy, come look at this." I said, "Okay." There we both stood looking down the toilet. And the next thing I know, Lynn had flushed the toilet and he was laughing and pulling at me saying, look, Randy, you can see the tracks below the train." I said, "Oh, well, that's interesting." Well, before I could focus my eyes, and then next, it filled up and he threw a cup in. And before I could focus my eyes on the floating cup, Lynn had flushed the toilet again and grabbed me and said, "Come on, Randy, hurry up, let's go now, right away." So he said, the next thing I remembered was being at the back of the train after we had already gone through 4 train cars and the dining car, and we're standing out in the back of the train, and my brother is going, "Look, there's the cup on the tracks." So somewhere just north of Houston, that cup's probably still sitting there between the rails. His curiosity and energy would continue like that on an endless ride for the rest of his life. Before and after the early travels to Wisconsin, Lynn would challenge our mother, Jane, each and every day. If Mom was shopping, Lynn was hiding. If Lynn was hiding, Mom would soon be convinced that Lynn was now lost forever. No matter how many times Lynn went off alone to discover what was around the corner, and this was a daily occurrence, I might add, no amount of discipline would ever help. As our mother tells it, Grandma Howell once told her that she should never attempt to suppress my brother's strong will. She took this advice to heart, letting his free spirit fuel that ride. Anyone who knew Lynn knows how obsessed he was with finding an angle or making a deal. For all of you, I can tell you that this started at about age 13. At that time, the local grocery store in Freeport, where we lived in Texas, was giving away what they called a push cart. Now, this is your basic go-kart without an engine. This is long before video games and things were popular. So to win a push cart was a pretty big deal. So in any case, what he did to win this was the interesting part. As soon as Lynn found out there was no limit to the number of times you could put your name in the hat to win the cart, he decided, well, I can win this. What's interesting is later, as the store manager tells it, every time they pulled out an entry, his name was on it. In fact, they had to continue pulling them out time after time until they got to 20 or 30 names before they finally found a name to award the next prize to. So his endless ride continued on his new red push cart. Our home in Freeport, Texas was only minutes from the beach in the Gulf of Mexico. Our family spent countless hours on the beach, and it was here that Lynn discovered fishing, and one day something a little bit more. As usual, Lynn would find the easiest and the fastest way to do almost anything, and this day he decided that maybe it would be great to take a folding lawn chair into the Gulf and fish from the lawn chair. Well, this seemed like a pretty comfortable and pleasant way to fish until the jellyfish found both Lynn and the chair. Our father grabbed him as he ran out of the surf screaming with his legs covered with welts. He never used a chair in the surf again to fish, but his love of fishing continued the rest of his life. By the time Lynn was in junior high, our family had moved to a small town in Ohio just east of Toledo. Lynn soon discovered music and started playing the drums. It was not long before he was a valued member of the school band and played in concert and marching band all through high school and college. In high school and college, he also played in small rock bands to earn extra money and to, of course, meet girls and party. While music was an important part of Lynn's life, it was not until college that he discovered his real talent, photography. On a humid late summer evening in 1965, good timing. Okay. On a humid late summer evening in 1965, a deadly tornado swept through northeastern Ohio, Toledo, Ohio. An entire subdivision was destroyed, many lives lost in the late night storm. Lynn was a sophomore at this time at Bowling Green State University, just south of Toledo. And he was enrolled in a basic photography course. I suspect he took that course figuring it would be a pretty easy grade. When he heard of the destruction in Toledo, he grabbed the cameras that were on loan from the school and headed for Toledo. Somehow he managed to get behind police lines, and his photographs made it into the Toledo Blade newspaper the next day. Soon after this, his photography professor encouraged him to continue photography and journalism. Needless to say, Lynn was then hooked on photojournalism and going behind police lines wherever he could. Lynn enjoyed his years in college, where he joined a fraternity and met his first wife, Peggy, and his fraternity brother and friend for life, Tom Payne. My mother and I moved to Wisconsin during Lynn's second year of college, and he soon pursued a summer internship at the Milwaukee Journal Photo Lab. Lynn graduated from school and came home with a new red convertible. He accepted a position as staff photographer with the Milwaukee Journal and was given a company car. Lynn was always pretty generous, and I was given the keys to his pride and joy. I was 16 years old, and my girlfriend and I tooled around in Lynn's 1966 Impala SS convertible all summer. The night before school started in September, I parked the car in the only place left on the street in front of our apartments and headed for bed. Not long after turning in, I heard a very loud crash, and my worst fears came true. Someone had crashed into Lynn's car where it was parked and all but totaled it. I had parked it in the worst place possible, but Lynn was not angry and felt worse for me than the loss of his car. A number of years later, Lynn lost another car, but this time it was his fault. On a very cold, wintry day in the 1970s, Lynn's photo assignment from the Milwaukee Journal was to get what the trade calls a weather picture, and that was to be for the Morning Sentinel. 3 weeks earlier, Lynn had taken delivery on his brand new company car, a Pontiac that was loaded with extras, trunk filled with camera equipment and a $1,200 stereo system. Lynn thought the ice fishermen and their shanties on Pewaukee Lake would provide the perfect weather picture he needed and a chance to drive out on the frozen lake and talk with the fishermen. Out on the lake, he headed toward a small village of shanties. He spent the next several hours hobnobbing with the fishermen and taking a few photos. Not bad for a day of work. As the sky darkened, he realized he needed to head back to shore and home for dinner. It was getting pretty dark, and Lynn asked one of the fishermen, "Hey, do you know the shortest route back to shore?" After a brief explanation, Lynn headed in the direction given him. It was the unmistakable sound of cracking ice that first signaled trouble. Instead of a shortcut to shore, he'd found a spring and thin ice instead. As his brand new company car disappeared beneath the surface, Lynn narrowly escaped by climbing out the driver's side window. As Lynn would later tell the story, he headed to a nearby tavern. There he had a beer before he did anything else. And after that, he explained to the bartender why he was sopping wet. And it was only at that point that he called the journal company and say, "Hey, your car is in Pewaukee Lake." It was the first time I've ever really seen my brother that shaken. Lynn said the worst part was being called to meet with the vice president of the journal company, who was not impressed by Lynn's decision to drive the company's car out on a frozen lake. Lynn said he was told that if he ever pulled a stupid stunt like that again, he'd be out of work, and he should consider himself pretty lucky he had a job. Lynn's military career started as a member of the Army National Guard. A military draft and the prospect of money for college prompted Lynn's enlistment in ROTC and later the Guard. Lynn was most proud of his commission as an officer in the Naval Reserves. As a public affairs officer, he was able to apply his photojournalism skills and in service to the Navy. This also afforded him the opportunity to travel the world and bank an additional check for retirement. He considered the photo he took of the USS Wisconsin firing her cannons for the last time one of the best photos he'd ever taken, and a framed copy forever hung in his office. Many of his shipmates are here with us today as we honor Lynn's life and his accomplishments. Thank you all for coming. Lynn would have been delighted to know that you took the time to pay tribute to him today.
Good afternoon. My name is Penny Howell. I'm Randy's wife, Lynn's sister-in-law, and it's my honor to talk about Lynn. During the past 3 weeks, as Randy and I have talked with our many friends and relatives about the passing of Lynn, there are some resounding themes. He lived a full life. He was full of life. He was always on the go, and he was always fun. Based on my experience of knowing Lynn for the past 24 years, all of these statements and more are so very true. Lynn always made rhetorical statements and questions such as, "This is the best," and "Isn't this good?" and "What a good deal." It was difficult to tell Lynn no because he was such a persistent individual. He was very persistent. He was also very charming. Tenacity was his middle name, and going after what he wanted was his game. This is one of the reasons that he was such an awesome photographer. He had an innate eye for a great photo moment, and he wouldn't let anything or anyone get in his way. He always wanted to convince his audience that they were experiencing the best. He was a man of great conviction and tenacity. Lynn was never one to back down on his beliefs. Probably like many of you, Lynn and I had our differences at times. There were times when he made me angry. However, during the years, I truly got to know the real Lynn. I grew to love Lynn, who I realized was a very caring man in his own special way. I will remember that he always had a smile, said hi there, and always enjoyed his cocktails. I can relate countless noisy, see? I can relate countless noisy, funny, happy, exciting, and turbulent memories. One thing I could count on, it would never be a dull moment when we were with Lynn. Randy and Lynn talking politics loudly, not agreeing, but debating. My family and I had the great experience of going on quite a few trips with Lynn and Missy. And there was the time that we went to New York during the hottest summer on record, with Lynn leading the pack. This is where we nicknamed him the Energizer Bunny. He said we should stay in Queens so we could get the best deal on a hotel. We sure did, even though it was an hour commute each way. Lynn didn't care. But Lynn never stopped going. The rest of us had a hard time keeping up with his pace. We had to make a trip to the camera store so we could get the best deal. Lynn focused on reaching his goal, not what he needed to do to get there. That seemed to be part of Lynn that came naturally. In May of 2001, we all took a family cruise to the Caribbean. His daughter, Melanie, who he fondly called Melski, was working for Carnival, and we thought it would be a great time for us all to get together. And it certainly was. Lynn tried to eat as much as he could so he could get his money's worth. And at one point, when we were sitting for dinner, and he said he was going to order his third lobster, Missy said that if he did, that she was going to leave. And she did, and he ate his lobster. At the time, our daughter Jennifer was 12, and she was taking a class, an etiquette class, on how to eat properly. And Lynn had a habit of putting his left forearm on the table. And we chuckled because Lynn dropped his soup, and he retrieved it with his soup spoon. It's a memory that's etched in our minds. Missy always traveled with a Tide stick, just in case Lynn would spill, which seemed to be much of the time. Lynn loved to cook. Emerald was his favorite, and he used many of his recipes. When we went to South Carolina for a visit this past July, Lynn insisted that he cook, and he made fresh shrimp and flounder, which was one of the best fish dishes I've had in my life. It was wonderful. Then there were the dinners that he made that weren't so wonderful, but were very memorable. Like the time we were over at Missy and Lynn's, and he wanted to smoke the turkey on the grill. Oh. Well, we were supposed to eat at 4. We ate at 8. He wasn't able to finish the turkey on the grill. We had to put it in the oven. And Lynn said, while we were eating this turkey, which we were not enjoying, "Isn't this the best? Isn't this good?" And then there was the time that Lynn insisted that he make fried fish and onion rings. And Mom says, "Oh God." It was incredible. He used half a gallon of Crisco, said, "Isn't this good?" which it was, but later in the night we were all a little unsettled. And then there was the last time when Lynn made blackened fish at our house because we had a hood and he thought he could vent it. Well, the fish was blackened, and so was our kitchen. No matter where we went, Lynn was always talking, either on the phone or to people he would meet along his journeys. As we can all attest to today, Lynn made friends wherever he went, all over the country, even different parts of the world. There's a cab driver in St. Thomas named Nelson who knows Lynn by name. Lynn never sat still, as you all know. As Missy says, Lynn never met a stranger. We went as a family to Egypt in January of 2003. Lynn was the one who said that we should go there because it was such a great deal. He turned out to be right. However, there was a small problem. Lynn and Randy decided to go club hopping at JFK Airport. They wanted to see who could drink the most. The results were really scary. They almost missed their flights. Lynn lost his jacket, and Randy temporarily his memory. And then we climbed Mount Sinai. It took us 4 hours to ascend. And along the path, while Missy was crying and I was huffing and puffing, Lynn, with his green camera bag that I'm sure most of you know, he was swatting camels because they were in our way. It was hysterical. Needless to say, Lynn took exquisite photos of our trip, wrote a short story which was later published in the Milwaukee Journal. It was a trip of a lifetime, and one we wouldn't have taken if Lynn hadn't said it was such a good deal. Last November, Lynn made a special trip to come back to Wisconsin to take our daughter Jennifer's high school portrait. She didn't want anyone other than her Uncle Lynn to take her pictures because she knows that he just was an exquisite photographer. For many years, Lynn would take Christmas pictures of his neighbors, the Sievers, their sons Gunnar and Larson. It became a tradition. And I know that there are many of you in the room who Lynn has taken countless photos of for your children's graduations or weddings and other special occasions. And I always tease Missy that I married Felix and she married Oscar. I have very vivid memories of your house on Highway 83 where Lynn dripped bleach on the light blue carpeting, which created a swirl effect. Or there was the time when Lynn wanted to clear the bathroom mirror after he took a shower and it was foggy. Instead of wiping it, Lynn just splashed it with water, which created fissures. And then there was the time we went to Hawaii, when we took a family trip to Kauai and decided to go kayaking. Lynn made the mistake of standing up in the kayak, and he and Missy got very wet. And it was on this same trip that Lynn left his camera bag at our last stop, and we almost missed our flight. I could go on with many more wonderful memories. These memories are what make me think happy thoughts about Lynn and our family. It is said that every man dies, but not every man lives. Lynn lived his life to the fullest. I read a quote that reminded me of Lynn. "I believe you should live each day as if it is your last, which is why I don't have any clean laundry. Because come on, who wants to wash clothes on the last day of your life? He who does not live life to its fullest can never know the full meaning of life." I know that every person in this room believes that Lynn indeed knew the meaning of life. Thank you.
I'm Captain Tom Plantenberg. When I first joined 713, which was a unit that Lynn was in, there were several of the old guys. I was the only enlisted guy in unit, and so Lynn would arrange these parties for all the officers. I never really got the message. So, but the story I have is we went to Corpus Christi, Texas once, and he arranged, after we had done our duty, some advance work for the USS Wisconsin. He somehow talked the editor of the Journal and the Navy into letting him go on this shark hunting expedition. And I spent most of the day throwing up the side of this little boat. And he kept saying, "Isn't this great?" And you go, "Yeah." And the highlight of that day, during the day, was I snagged onto something, and one of the paint customers snagged onto something, and our lines crossed, and Lynn is taking pictures, and the captain of the boat walked up with a little shear and snapped my line because I hadn't paid for the fish and the other guy had. So when we got back to shore, we got off and we're walking down this little pier, and he goes, "Hey Tom," he says, "let's get some shrimp." I said, "Where are we going to get shrimp this time of night?" He says, "You watch." And he walks up, and there's shrimp boats all around, and these guys are, you know, they're cleaning out their nets or whatever, and there's piles of shrimp. And he walks up and he says to one of the boat captains, he says, "Hey, I want to buy some shrimp. I'm going back to Wisconsin, and I want to take some good shrimp with me." And the guy said, "Well, you can't buy them." But I had kind of a weird T-shirt on. I'm not going to describe it, but it was just a T-shirt. It wasn't anything special. But anyway, the guy said, "But I'll tell you what, I'll give you all the shrimp you want if I can have that T-shirt." And 2 seconds later, Lynn had just literally jumped over and ripped my T-shirt. So I'm a modest man. I'm standing here with no shirt on, and Lynn is in the shrimp boat, and he's packing shrimp into some kind of a carton, and he's working on his guy. And I'm thoroughly disgusted. And I walked back to the hotel we were staying in, which, by the way, what a deal. He got us the Empire Suite at the Hershey Hotel. We had literally the whole top floor. And I fell asleep. It was probably 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I hear all this noise. I hear, just imagine somebody throwing rocks into a metal bucket, and then slam, and then a couple of minutes later, rocks into a metal bucket. Well, he was pouring ice into this great big styrofoam chest he had found. He's packing these shrimp in this ice. And he's cleaned out 2 or 3 floors of the hotel of all their ice. He's got some other fish in there too. And I woke up disgusted and, you know, kind of swore at him a little bit. And he says, "Well, this is great. We got all these shrimp." So we packed the shrimp, and and he's wrapping duct tape and plastic bags around this. And just look at it this way. About the size of your pew, about half the size of your pew, is, you know, this great big styrofoam thing full of ice and shrimp with duct tape around it. It's got no structure to it, and we can't even pick it up. Having worked in a hotel when I was a kid, I went down to the kitchen and I got a whole bunch of egg crates, which are really strong, and we somehow fashioned a structure around this thing. We took it to the airport with us. Now, Corpus Christi, Texas in August is about 110 degrees. And imagine this, Lynn is in his whites, I'm standing in line, he's in front of me, his hat's on sideways, he's sweat through his uniform, he's kneeling down, asking for plastic and duct tape from anyone he can get. There's a young lady about 22, 23 years old, I can still see her face. She's blonde and pretty, and she does not sweat. And she is looking at him from behind the counter, and she says, "Sir, would there be something organic in the package you're wrapping?" He You know, Lynn, what? Sir, what is in that package? And do you intend to take it on my airplane? He says, it's shrimp. I see. And would it be packed in ice? And he goes, he looks at me and he says, did she just tell me to pack it up my ass? You all know Lynn would say that, right? He did say that. I said, ice, ice. Think northern, ice. He says, of course it's in ice. It's 120 blankety-blank degrees here. The shrimp are gonna melt. I see. So what sort of ice would it be? What sort of ice? Hotel ice. And she says, would that be as opposed to gas station ice? Of course, she wanted to know if it was wet ice or dry ice, and we got through that and explained it. And he did get the package aboard the airplane, and it was one of these little commuter things that we ended up on. And the last thing I recall of that trip, we landed in Milwaukee, and we got out of the plane, and they dropped the bag, and they're taking baggage out, and all of a sudden he starts running, hell-bent for election, as they take this thing, and two guys heave it, and it hits the tarmac and completely loses its shape. And he runs over to it. He says, my shrimp! And he throws the bag over his shoulder. It's a mass of plastic bags and duct tape and shrimp and styrofoam chunks are falling out of it. And he's walking through the airport, trailing all this water and stuff behind him. And the last thing he said to me is, boy, this was really a good deal.
Hi, I'm Bill Tucker. I served with Lynn for a number of years. And I just want to make a comment about his skills as a photographer. We brought a fast frigate into port, in the Milwaukee port one time, and I wanted to get a really great shot. So I went down with my camera, and I worked for 2 hours positioning, trying to take the perfect picture of this ship. I shot 40 pictures. Lynn showed up, ran down to the pier, laid down on the water, took one shot with his camera, took off, and it appeared on page 1 of the Milwaukee Journal. And I threw my 40 pictures away.
I just wanted to clarify the story about the Pontiac going into Milwaukee Heights. Anyway, this is my angle. My name is Dick Bauer, and I used to be the manager of the German photo department. I was working that morning, and Lynn had the assignment to photograph or get a weather picture. And it was, we've had a lot of cold weather, freezing temperatures and what have you, so finding something going on outside is very difficult. Lynn was coming in from Heartland, and he decided to stop in Pewaukee. Normally he would have stopped off at the bait shop to check on ice conditions and who was catching fish, so he could probably go fishing after work. Anyhow, he didn't. I was in the office, and in my office, clear across the room, some guy's yelling, our assignment editor yells, Lynn's car is going down in Pewaukee. And I ran up there and said, what's this? He said, well, Lynn just called. Remember, we didn't have cell phones. We had two-way radios. And Lynn just got a new car. And I said, well, how's Lynn? He's crawling on top of his car. I said, tell him to get off the roof and get on the ice. I said, what's he going to do, go down with the ship? I said, tell him to get to a telephone and call me. So anyway, Lynn calls me. He says, Bauer, he said, I'm at the bait shop. I said, that's great. He said, you have a hole in the ice. I suppose you're going fishing. I said, Lynn, I said, you're okay. I said, right. I said, did you get a picture of it? He said, no, the cameras are in the car. I said, Lynn, not only do you have a new car, I just bought you 2 new Nikons, motorized Nikons with 6 new lenses. I said, that was my budget for the year. Anyway, the vice president did call me later that morning. He said, what's the story about Lynn? I said, well, I had a talk with Lynn. He said, what are you going to do about Lynn? I said, I'm going to talk to Lynn. And, he said, okay, tell me about it later. Well, yeah, I said, yes, of course, sir. I said, remember now, Lynn has done some great things. I said, when the president was in town, he got some good pictures. I said, remember when the plane crashed down south of Milwaukee? The airliner? I said, Lynn raced down there, got on the freeway, got behind the squad car, got through the roadblocks. And then when he got to the scene of the accident, police had already cordoned off the whole place. A couple of kids were out there running onto the crash site. Police were chasing him. And Lynn saw his opportunity. He crawled under the fence, got out there, got his pictures, got back home, and he made the addition. So I said, remember, Lynn does have good qualities. I said, so we lost it. I said, we lost a few material things. I said, we didn't lose a man on this assignment. So anyway, the vice president called me. I had to talk to him. I told him all these stories. He said, I still want to see Lynn. I said, okay. I said, I'll talk to Lynn. I said, remember what I told you. So anyway, we kept Lynn. Kept Lynn and the staff, and we had some good times. There was one other story. Remember the Burger Binder cross-country race that we have every year up in Cable, Wisconsin? Well, Lynn's been covering this for 2 years, always volunteered. And I wondered why. You know, it's the middle of nowhere. Cable, Wisconsin doesn't have very good communications. And remember, once again, we're using film cameras, and when we transmit a picture, we have to take the picture, we have to develop the film, we have to make a print, we put it on a transmitter. The little thing that goes around in circles takes about 7 to 10 minutes to transmit it. Well, that's what we had to do in Cable, Wisconsin. And it's hard because you have a time element involved. Lynn had been doing this for 2 years. Then I figured out he was making money on the side. And he said, Lynn, I said, remember the company rules. You can freelance all you want on your own time. But when you're working for the newspaper, I said we're working for the Journal, the Milwaukee Journal, and Milwaukee Sentinel, you're working for the company. And so I took him off of that assignment, and he said, I want to volunteer to go up there on my own time. I said, that's okay. So he did. He contracted with the Burger Binder people, take pictures, and they would find people around the country and around the world. You know, people came from all over the world for this race. And he'd transmit pictures to publications all around the country and make some money. So I said, that's okay, Lynn, as long as you're not working for the newspaper at the same time. So that was another enterprise. I won't go any further, but there are some other good stories.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jane, Maureen and I want you to know that there's nothing worse than losing one of your own kids. Nothing worse than that. I want to also mention to you, direct your attention to some of the pictures that you saw up there, the hunting and fishing pictures that you saw. And you're going to see why I bring your attention to that here in a couple of minutes. Anyway, you saw a logo up there for a hunting and fishing camp called the Wildlife Society. Okay? You're going to find out here in a couple of minutes where that came from. And it came from that guy right there. Okay? So, I first met Lynn through the running world back around 81 or 82 in there someplace. And I soon found out he liked this hunting and fishing stuff, and we were into it also. And 3 of us guys here were invited to a camp in Oconto County back in '81. And in '83, we found out from Lynn that he was sniffing around trying to get an invite into this camp, you know. So we had a huddle with the camp owners up there, and they said, yeah, it's a great idea, come on down. We want you in our camp, you know. So he came in there in '83, and the first Friday night, it's Fish Friday night. He loves cooking, everybody knows that. So we're in that camp up there Friday night, and he's drinking the vodka and having a good old time. He had a wok about 3 feet in diameter on top of this stove, cooking fish for the troops on Friday night at deer camp, and he's cooking away and having a good old time and drinking the stuff and getting stoned, okay? All of a sudden, that wok is upside down on the floor. There's grease all over the carpeting. It's a mess, and we had to clean it up. It's a carpeted floor. Clean the thing up, mop it up the best we could. But the 2 guys who owned the camp never forgave him for that incident, okay? That was in '83. We were in that camp up there through 1988, and we started to get rumors, and we started to get vibrations that these 2 guys who owned that camp wanted him out, or us out. They want somebody out of that place, you know. So we started getting rumors of that. The 3 of us, all the wildlife guys are here today. The 3 of us guys had a huddle up there. It might have been in a bar. It's possible. Had a huddle and said, hey, we think they're going to try to kick Lynn out of here. And if they're going to kick him out, they're kicking us out too. So we got to do a preemptive strike, and the 4 of us pull the plug and go and set up our own camp. And so we did. Well, we set our own camp up in '89, our own fish and hunting camp, and we gave him the assignment to come up with a camp name. And that's where the camp name came from. It was called the Wildlife Society, 2 words, the Wildlife Society. And he had the orders also to create the logo, and he had access to these media type peoples in the Milwaukee Journal, artists and stuff like that. And that's where that crazy moose logo that you saw, it came from Lynn Howell, from an artist out of the Milwaukee Journal. That's where it came from. Okay? Now, I think it's an important thing if you can leave a mark on life, and this character left a mark in the Wildlife Society that will never, ever be forgotten. I'll finish it up with this. He's responsible for creating that logo. There are 6 of us that created this camp. We're now 3 generations deep in this camp. And you saw the pictures there of that hunting blind. That hunting blind up there, and way up in the Nicolay Forest. A week from tomorrow at noon, the Wildlife Society is going to present military honors according to the United States Army protocol over that blind in his honor. That's it.
My name is Bob Germanero. I have a couple of stories about this young man. We were all in the same unit. And Lynn, we were down in a conference down at Great Lakes. And it was a weekend conference. And at this conference, there was also a wedding going on. And we're all in this conference and sitting around and enjoying ourselves, and all of a sudden we see they're starting to take wedding pictures. And they have the bride and the groom and the wedding party behind them, and here's Lynn Howell standing in the wedding party. Lynn, why are you doing this? He said, can you just imagine 20 years from now, they're going to be looking at these pictures and go, who the hell is that? So that was our Lynn Howell. I have another one, but I've got old timers and I can't remember. I want to tell you about this guy being a photographer, and Bill alluded to it. He was taking pictures for the Navy one day. And what he did was he literally crawled up, that's on a tall ship, which has sails. He literally crawled to the top of the mast and taped a camera on the mast and wired it remotely. So when the U.S., what was it, the Constitution left and went out on its annual cruise, he could take pictures from that location. He was a fantastic photographer. The other story that I will tell, and I have to kind of say it gingerly, is that we went down to a place called Dinfos down at Fort Benjamin Harris in Indianapolis. And it's a very old base. And the BOQ had a room, a bathroom, and then another room. So you had an adjoining room, 2 people used the bathroom. And Lynn and I drove down, figuring, well, we'll be across from each other. Well, that wasn't the case. He had a woman in the room next to him. So he went back and started spreading it. Tell him, let's spread the rumor that I'm a pervert. Lynn, why would you want to do that? Well, can you imagine what she's going to think? So you got to help us. Let's spread this rumor. So the class of 40 or 50 people, the word got out. They did not move this woman. They moved Lynn. But the rest of the story is we were all in very, very old facilities. They moved him to brand new facilities that was a suite. And he went, isn't this a great deal?
We're going to have time for one more of these stories, and then Randy's inviting everyone over to his house later, and you can share more of these stories then.
I hate to be the last one, so I'll be real brief, so maybe you can slide another one in. My name's Bill Maris. I might have the distinction of having known Lynn longer than anyone in the room besides his immediate family. I first met him over 40 years ago. Randy and I were boyhood friends, and Lynn was still in college, and he was always just a great, great guy. Randy, you heard the story about when the car got wrecked, and we marveled what a wonderful brother he was. But I had the distinction later of also serving with him in the Navy, and we were brother officers, and we became great friends, and we were lifelong friends. I truly loved the guy. But talking about a wedding, Bob, I have to tell you one of my funniest memories of him, and there are just so many. At my retirement party a few years ago, Lynn was there, and as he was always doing, he was taking photos. And he handed me the film, I think it was two rolls of 35mm film, and he said, Bill, just go get them developed. Well, we went and we got them developed, and we found out they were double exposures from somebody's wedding pictures. So he had actually shot, I can't imagine what the people were thinking they were waiting for his wedding photos. I never called him and told him. I figured it's better he didn't know. So Lynn knows now. But Commander, we just think the world of you. God bless you.
Thank you all for sharing those memories. And as I said, Randy's having people over, and I'm sure that the stories will continue there.
When they go to see their oncologist, the real treatment that they should take, and even the oncologists don't really know how to treat each case. This foundation was set up after the death of a man who was 44 years old. His story is much like Lynn's. Started out with some indigestion, later had acid reflux, etc., and died very quickly. They set up the foundation in his name, the Fiorelli, and I ask all of you if you could look into your hearts and dig deep into your pockets and give some type of donation to this wonderful cause. What they do is they're trying to further more knowledge about it. The awareness that they want to set up will come in the form of posters and pamphlets in doctors' offices so that more people can become aware of what the early warning signs are of this really tragic disease and very serious disease. Thank you for that. There is a box out front that you can put donations in, as well as at our home you can do the same. Whose arm doth bind the
restless wave, who beats the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus?
Going to the house?
Yeah. Will I still?
Susan, to the king. I get my clothes. Yeah.
Doing okay in college, kid?
What do you do? Give it time exposure on those? No, I just push a button. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, well, sure.
I'll see you over there.
Okay, interim executive manager. So I've got I'm.
It's like Elvis Presley. You guys wouldn't know Elvis Presley, would you?
She's executive director of elections.